So, good afternoon, everybody. My name's John Johnson from NSF, and you've dialed into our monthly webinar series, and this one is entitled How to Stop Making the Same Mistakes Again. And happy Monday, everybody. We've got people here from Denmark, US, UK, Spain, Russia, Sweden, Germany, Italy, France, Netherlands, Bulgaria, Korea, Cyprus, Ireland, Israel, Singapore, India, Canada, Malta, Belgium, and what an amazing spring morning. Beautiful and idyllic place. It must be in the Bahamas. I don't think I've had anyone dial in from the Bahamas before, so that's great to hear. So we're going to be talking about making mistakes, and we're going to talk about how to prevent them. I'm going to leave this slide on some introductions to NSF just on your screen for a few seconds. I think most of you know us pretty well. You know what we do, you know what we excel in, and that continues. Many of you will also know me personally or professionally. So I'm John Johnson. I'm a Vice President at NSF Health Sciences. Working on a number of projects, transformational projects, to try and improve the quality, output, and costs at pharmaceutical companies around the world, particularly companies that have been struggling with meeting the requirements of GMP or being ready for regulatory inspections. And I'm probably one of the best and worst people to talk about making mistakes, because over the course of my career, my life, I've made plenty of mistakes, but I've not actually made many a second time. And the reason for that is I try to learn by them. And that's a key thing. You know, you may think that making mistakes is part of life, and yes, I guess it is, but wouldn't it be much easier life if you could only make fewer mistakes and less severe mistakes along the way? So how do we do that? How do we do that personally? And how do we actually do it professionally as well? So we're going to talk about the causes and consequences of error within the pharmaceutical industry. And we're going to think about what is actually causing heartburn to our industry. Because, as I said before, we have to live life in the real world. We are going to make mistakes on occasions. We are going to make a decision that later on down the line we regret or we wish we'd done differently. And to some degree, that's quite normal. And it's part of human behavior that we make mistakes and we learn from them. But the key thing there is that we actually learn, that we actually gain a deep understanding as to what caused that issue and how you can prevent it. Because ultimately, mistakes cause a degree of heartburn. They lead to an erosion of trust with people around you or organizations you work with. They diminish credibility, they slow down business transactions, and of course they can impact on cost, timeliness, product quality, and ultimately, in the worst and most severe cases, patient safety. So when we're thinking about how to reduce errors, the key thing here is to try and understand what's in it for me. How will I become better at what I do, the best version of myself? How will I make our company a higher performing outfit if I can only learn more about how errors occur? And fundamentally, we know that our industry is highly technical, highly regulated, and know-how is absolutely crucial. But to actually reduce errors, you need more than that. You need the know-why. And in order to know the know-why in terms of errors, you need a deep understanding of the likely root causes, you need to be excellent at risk assessment, and you need to use plan, do, check, and act in a way that prevents those errors reoccurring. So we're going to be talking over the next 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes or so, on how you can error-proof your operation. Ultimately, of course, the fact that you've dialed into this webinar is really encouraging, because you're saying to yourselves that actually I want to address this as an issue. Because if you don't try to address this, you'll have this old quotation from Henry Ford ringing in your ears. So if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you always got. And the fact that you're here trying to push the boundaries, improve your workplace is really, really encouraging. So thank you for that, and happy Monday. So the key thing here, though, is that we're all really busy. And if we really look at this, does anyone really have the time to fix something that isn't hurting? So how do you really work out whether it's worth fixing an issue? Well, you think about three key questions. You think about, how much is it hurting me? How often will it hurt me? And do I get some form of early warning so that I can do some preventive action or aversionary action in order to avoid that issue hurting me or my operation? And indicators are really, really important here, aren't they? If you drive your car anything like I do, I'll drive my car when there's an amber warning light flashing. I'll drive the car when there is 2 amber lights flashing. But at the point at which that light starts to go red, I'll do something about it, because I'm just too busy to act on every single signal. What I'm doing there is actually doing a risk assessment and trying to decide whether I can finish my journey even though I've got that indicator flashing. So having the right indicators around your organization is absolutely crucial, because without those indicators, it almost feels like driving down a motorway or an autobahn or a freeway at 100 kilometers per hour in the dark with no headlamps on. It's just not a sensible thing to do. Also, think hard about the subliminal messages that you may see in your colleagues or in your manager or in your regulators or your clients. They may be telling you things that are quite subtle, that if you don't act on them and that you continue to ignore them, ultimately you could feel as if your relationships are degenerating and would lead to a punch in the jaw. So it's important to look out for the subliminal messages as well. Also think hard about the indicators that are out there that could, on the face of it, seem very trivial. So a couple of moles or a couple of spots on your neck or on your arm, you know, nothing to worry about immediately, but if you've had a very hot summer and you've got your skin burnt over the summer and that mole starts to change color or size, it's giving you an indication that there could be something more serious somewhere further down the track. So don't ignore the small things as well. Certainly if you've got a persistent dry cough and this goes on for some weeks, you may say to yourself, is this actually just a cough? Is it just flu? Is it just man flu? Or should I be doing something to look into this more deeply and do a proper diagnosis? And ultimately, when we think of our businesses, we need to understand what to trend, how to trend it, and what a trend actually means, and how should we act when that trend occurs. Because ultimately, it's true across human behavior that many times we actually leave it far too late before we take action. And if we leave it too late, then the number of options we have, the amount of degrees of freedom we have in what to do next, diminishes exponentially. So it's always good to take early action. So why do we wait until an indicator becomes a crisis? Often it's because actually we don't want to hear it. We want our lives to be a smooth journey across a calm sea with no waves and very easily navigated. And when something off beam or off scale, left field occurs, we just ignore it because we don't want to hear it, and that can lead to phenomenal issues further down the track. Sometimes that news is just too uncomfortable to take on board. Sometimes we're just not sure of the risks. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know what to do next. Sometimes we may be in a culture where we're fearful of what others might think if we call out that issue. If we give other people an early warning of what's occurring, we may be fearful of how to communicate that and how other people may interact with us when we tell them of this issue further down the line. We may not be sure of the consequences if we allow that indicator to become a crisis. We may not think through all of the things that could go wrong if we take no action, and we're not sure how to tackle it. And it's an interesting reminder really on how to manage CAPA, that often we forget the true definition of corrections, corrective actions, and preventive actions. So for example, if you have a hole in the road and it has a hazard for ongoing vehicles and traffic, the correction is to put a sign around it and make sure that everybody drives around the hole and doesn't fall into it. The corrective action is to actually fill in the hole and prevent any damage. But we often forget that we need preventive actions that actually foresee issues occurring. And we don't spend enough time on the preventive actions that scan and look out for those issues before they become a crisis and prevent them from reoccurring. We as an industry seem very good at corrections. We seem pretty good at corrective actions, but actually in our experience across the industry, very, very poor at preventive actions. And when you look at the relative value of these key actions, you can see that constant correction is really not going to give you the value you're looking for. All you're doing is making a sign, expecting people to read the sign and take their own actions, some of which will lead to further recurring problems. But if only we spent more time on prevention, we know that the value in preventing recurrence would go up exponentially. And equally, the cost of continuous correction, the Groundhog Day of completing CAPA time and time and time again without fully preventing the issue leads to phenomenal waste within our industry. So I would say that when you're looking at a deviation investigation or a failure investigation or some form of improvement to your quality system, the focus of correction, corrective action, and preventive action should be no different than 10%, 20%, 70%, making sure you spend the majority of your time in trying to prevent recurrence. So the key message here is it's really important for us to be alert of the trends, the indicators and the signals, and be prepared to tackle issues head on. You know, don't be the ostrich, don't put your head in the sand. It may be uncomfortable at first, but by tackling issues, you're going to get an improvement to your overall quality system. So let's relate this to ICHQ9, the Quality Risk Management Guideline, because this acts as a fantastic blueprint for being alert and prioritizing issues. Now, you'll hear me many times talk about how important key performance indicators are, how data is king, how we have to be objective in our decision making, we have to use science-based thinking, and we have to use an assessment of risk in all of our decisions. But also just think outside the box sometimes. Think about not just how your head makes decisions, but also how your heart and your guts make decisions too. Think about your intuition, your experience, opinion, different perspectives from people in your organization, and make sure all of those are used as indicators on what action you should take. So when you look at ICHQ9, of course all of you will know that there is a relative probability number that is based on severity, occurrence and detectability. So essentially, severity is looking at how will it hurt me if I do nothing, how will it hurt the business, our reputation, our credibility, product quality, GMP compliance, or how will it hurt our clients or ultimately the patients that we serve. Occurrence looks at the frequency of something occurring, and detectability looks at the ability of your quality system to foresee these issues and take avertive action ahead of this becoming a crisis. So by scoring severity, occurrence and detectability and multiplying those numbers together, you get a very clear ranking of risks that you can form into a register, and then using that register and the ranking within it, you can then apply an overriding set of resources on prevention first, then corrective action, and then, if nothing else can be done, some form of immediate correction. But keep the emphasis on preventive action. So, what's in it for me? Well, ultimately, none of us like a crisis. None of us like nasty surprises. Ultimately, because crises tend to cost more, they hurt more, and they last longer. And when I was looking into the background to this webinar, it reminded me of a very nasty crash that occurred in London about a year ago with a tram that took a corner within the centre of London at a speed that was outside the design space of the tram, and the tram tipped over, and I believe there were maybe 2 or 3 fatalities and many people injured in that nasty accident. Black box theory was applied to that accident so that the accident investigators could spend the time understanding all of the contributory factors that led to that accident, those multitude of small variations and issues that combined to cause that accident. And when they looked into it, they saw that the tram was actually taking the corner at 45 miles per hour when 18 miles per hour was the recommended limit. But the reasons were that there were signs that were missing, signs that were unlit, there were no speed regulators in the tram or on the track, and the driver himself was not paying attention as he should have been. So there were a multitude of contributory factors which in isolation were relatively small, but when combined obviously caused what was an inevitable problem. It also reminded me that one of my bosses that I worked with when I was in industry a few years ago said, "John, you actually have the most straightforward job possible, the simplest job possible for me as a quality leader within our organization. You in effect have one job." And he said to me, "Your job is to manage risk." So what does that mean? What does manage risk mean? It means find the issues, rank the issues, fix and prevent the issues. So if you are either not finding issues as you should be, you're not prioritizing them, you're not fixing them, you're not preventing them, you're essentially not doing your role to the standard that's expected as a quality leader. So remember, all of us have one job, and that is to mitigate or reduce risk. Black box theory is actually very influential in our thinking on how to set up a model deviation investigation system. And we've used this to try and define the non-negotiable basic expectations of a model deviation management system. So if you're meeting these 5 to survive, these 5 non-negotiable rules, you're going to have a deviation investigation system that is largely going to be compliant to the GMPs and high performing. So why not have those rules at the front page of your deviation procedure as a reminder, as a trigger to your staff? Why not have them on posters? Why not have them on laminated sheets next to the workplace to remind people that immediate engagement, the Gemba, triaging of risk, having an open, blame-free culture and an open investigation process that is properly recorded on structured worksheets is going to lead to the right root cause analysis and ultimately define the right CAPA and the right actions. Because ultimately we spend across our industry millions and millions of dollars week on week on CAPA, many of which actually do not prevent recurring issues. Why is that? Because we didn't take the time to find the most likely root cause in the first place. And the best companies in the world are very, very detailed at making sure they understand the contributory factors, the most likely root causes, before they define any CAPA. Because wasted CAPA is wasted time, and it's really just masking an issue that will reoccur in time. So, Ultimately, what are the 6 key steps in preventing crises and recurring issues and errors? The first thing of all is you've got to look out for them. You've got to be meticulous. You've got to be detailed. You've got to be consistent in developing a quality system that is going to look for issues. I once worked on a firm that was making 25 million vials per fortnight, sterile products per fortnight, and the number of deviations that they were recording over the course of a year was in the region of 20 to 30 deviations. What did that tell me? It told me they weren't looking hard enough for improvements. They weren't looking hard enough for the holes in the road ahead of them. They were just really blindly carrying on making products without having the surveillance processes, the investigative processes, and the foresight processes to look for issues. Because if you don't look for something, you don't see it and you won't fix it. The second thing you have to do is call out the issue. Call it out for what it is. So in anything, in any walk of life, one of the very first steps in actually fixing an issue, be it with a relationship, a personal relationship, or a work relationship, or a technical issue within the industry or outside the industry, is you have to be really forensic in defining what the problem is. And then give it a name, call it out, make it clear that you know exactly the dynamics and dimensions of that particular issue. Call it out for what it is, pull the shrouds away from it, and allow other people to see the issue for what it is in terms of its severity, its frequency of occurrence, and obviously its detectability. The third step is to assess the risks of doing nothing. You know, ultimately, every action we have in industry has to have a return on investment. If not, we're just wasting our time. And you know, guys, none of us have got enough time to waste. So we have to spend our precious minutes on important things every day, every week, every month. So it's really important when you're looking at an issue and you've defined the issue, assess the risks of doing nothing. If you took no action at all, how bad could that problem get? How much worse is it going to get? How is it going to affect you, your business, your staff, your clients, your regulators, and ultimately your patients? Because once you've made that assessment, it should become clear then what to do next and whether it's worth taking action. Of course, as I've mentioned before, understanding the know why, why has that issue become an issue, is absolutely crucial in understanding the potential of the root causes, and obviously being excellent at root cause analysis, auditing, shop floor quality assurance, and in failure investigation is crucial in really determining what to do next and how to avert crises and errors. Of course, once you decide to do an investigation, to do a deep dive, to actually spend the time working with people to understand the issue, that investigation has to be fair, it has to be balanced and factual and thorough, it has to be done in a blame-free way that's objective and data-based and sensitive to all of the people that are involved in it, gaining their perspective, their trust, and their belief that this is something that is worth fixing. Because in any other case, you'll get a skewed result, you'll get the wrong root cause, you'll define the wrong CAPA, risking again that mistake or error occurring again. Ultimately then, you've then got to take the action that has been suggested and worked through, and then at some stage afterwards check that action actually worked. And there's a nice example of how this has worked outside of our industry. So the UK Olympic cycling team was a cycling team that had won very, very few medals 10 to 15 years ago in the Olympics and in World Championships. And their coaching and management team utilized exactly these 6 steps in turning around the fortunes of that cycling team. They looked at the details, They looked at the multitude of variations in the way their athletes trained and prepared and mentally prepared for the races. They looked at the detail and the error modes and the failure investigations of the bikes themselves, the bicycles themselves, and the equipment, the helmets, the clothing. And they did very thorough forensic root cause analysis that then led to some fantastic improvements that now means the UK cycling team is in a strong position each Olympics to win gold. And it's that attention to detail that we take into our industry as well. And of course, ultimately, this is a cyclical process. But of course, once you've decided on your corrective actions and preventive actions, how do you actually make them sticky? How do you make them successful, not just as a one-off, but as an ongoing improvement? How do you make sure that people don't revert back to the earlier behaviours? And we've done a lot of study of a document that came from the UK Cabinet Behavioural Insights team, the so-called Nudge Unit, who have really studied how to make behaviours stick. If you're going to the trouble of training staff, upgrading policies and procedures, upgrading the way people work and think in the workplace and how they make their own decisions and value judgments, you want to be sure that you don't have to repeat that every week, every month. You want it to endure. So how do you do that? Well, the UK Cabinet Behavioural Insights team have done a lot of work for us on this, and we've studied this, and it really goes along the lines of making all of your interactions EAST, E-A-S-T. So first of all, make the right thing to do easy and the wrong thing to do hard. So you're trying to make doing the right thing as simple as possible, removing barriers, making things straightforward, natural, use ergonomics, and make sure that anything that you want not to happen is actually designed in such a way to make it difficult for people to do it that way. Then, of course, you want to make things attractive. You want people to work to your standards because they find it a good thing to do. You want them to have the ability to do those things as well. So you need to provide them with education, education, not just training. Help them understand the know why. Remind them using triggers. Give them the ability to actually fulfill that need and follow that behavior even when you're not watching outside of normal shifts. You also want to make doing the right thing feel social, and you want them to feel as if doing things in a sloppy way or a way that has variation, let them see how antisocial that can be and how unattractive and non-competitive that makes the overall organisation. And of course, ultimately, you've got to make that change at a time when people are most receptive, when they are engaged with the message, and when they are open to change. And sometimes, guys, when we get a crisis, you've got to make sure that crisis is used to effect the best change. And I would certainly recommend to you a great training course that we're running this summer on changing GMB behaviours, and there's the link shown below. So a final thought on this, fundamentally, whether you're thinking of children, our old folk, our parents, our neighbours, or our workplace friends in our place of employment, let's make sure we look out for them. Let's make sure that we keep them safe. Let's make sure we mitigate risk across those 4 areas. Let's call out the issues. Let's help people fix issues. Let's try and get a deep understanding of what we can do to make their lives better. Let's work with them to resolve issues, and ultimately, let's not sleep on the job. Let's make sure that we take the actions that are going to make their lives so much better, more pleasant, and with fewer nasty surprises. So, what are the next steps? Well, I always come back to the 6-fingered hand. This is a nice trigger that reminds me of the things that firms do in order to be high performing at what they do. They build expertise across these 6 key areas, and prevention of human error, so important. I've also put a few links in there for you as well to some nice videos that we've done that are available on our websites around the case studies that we've performed that have reduced error in the workplace, made some phenomenal changes to batch release lead times, to the number of recurring deviations, and strengthened policies and procedures from a design point of view rather than just from a sticking plaster point of view. So you know us, we can help you in education programs, gap analysis, behavioral change, and we're available to you, of course, at all times. I just wanted to draw your attention very quickly to our next webinar, which is going to be performed by Martin Lush. He's going to be talking about human error prevention, and particularly the psychology of why people make mistakes. That one is on April the 24th. So I hope you'll get something from that as well. So I just really wanted to leave you with that final thought, that it's so important to look around you, see your impact on your children, your family, old folk, parents, your neighbors, and your colleagues in the workplace. You know, look out for them, take care of them, help them prevent issues going forward, help them see the signals, and just help them have a better life, because life's complicated. Let's just try and make it a little bit simpler, a little bit more successful, with fewer nasty surprises. I hope that was useful to you. I certainly enjoyed doing it. I'll continue to make some mistakes along the way, but I'll keep learning from them, and I'll try to avoid making the same mistake twice. So I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. Have a happy Monday, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.